Imagine this. You're sitting home, enjoying some TV, reading a book, doing whatever it is that you do. And all of a sudden, cops come rolling through your door and take all of your firearms. What happened? Well, you live in this state, which just became the 22nd state to pass the so-called red flag laws, in other words, extreme risk protection orders. There is no due process on the front end. It's just a roommate or family member and a judge. Maybe you got in an argument with them. Maybe you beat them at Warhammer or you had the cooler train set. I don't know what the deal is, but you landed on their wrong side, and as a result, you now find yourself at the receiving end of 2 sticks of sheriff's deputies rolling through your front and back door to seize your collection. What happens next? You fight for your Second Amendment life, spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on an attorney, while we take a moment to figure out how the heck this state got here, because folks, we're up to 22 states. 22 states. I promise you, this will be coming through DC sooner rather than later. So sit up, pay attention. This is the most recent red flag law to pass, meaning this is the one that the anti-gunners like the most as they copy paste from state to state. So guys, let's get into it. So let's be very clear about what happened in Maine on February 21st, 2026. A new gun law took effect that allows a family member, spouse, adult child, sibling, or even a roommate that you lived with for 6 months or more to walk into a Maine courthouse, swear out a petition claiming that you're dangerous, and bing, have a judge issue an order removing your firearms before you have any idea of the fact that this was happening in the first place. No right to have an attorney consulted, no right to have a mental health evaluation first. Nope. If a judge reads this is called ex parte communication, by the way, so outside the presence of the other party. If the person said the magic words, you're off to the races. No requirement that law enforcement be involved at the front end either, something that some law enforcement agencies were deeply concerned about. Not even a notice to you that someone is petitioning against you in court. So even if you're not allowed to be there to talk to the judge, at least you could be on the phone trying to hire an attorney. No. Absolutely not. And by the way, in the case of a temporary extreme risk protection order, that's kind of what happens first before your official hearing. You may not even have the right to an attorney. What is this all? Well, this is the nation's newest red flag law. And I want to walk you through exactly how this differs from what it had before, because folks, the old one wasn't extreme enough. That's why we've got the new one. So Maine was the only state in the country with what's been commonly called a yellow flag law. What am I talking about? Well, under the yellow flag law system, which had been on the books since about 2020, the process had 2 built-in safeguards that most red flag frameworks don't. First, only law enforcement could initiate the process. Not your family, not your neighbor, not a roommate, law enforcement. Second, before any court order could be issued, a licensed mental health professional had to perform an evaluation on the individual in question and determine whether or not they presented a likelihood of foreseeable harm. That's a professional clinical judgment standing between the accused and gun removal. I'm not asking you to like that. Let me be clear. I'm not holding that up as that's the gold bar standard. It's not the gold bar standard, that's the yellow flag standard. Don't confuse those two. That wasn't good enough. The fact that someone had to call the cops and get the cops involved, people didn't like that. Too inconvenient, too messy. We don't want law enforcement. We don't want mental health professionals. We just want immediate action. So we, of course, now have the new red flag law, which eliminates both of those safeguards and protections that were once built in. And now what we have? Direct action. All without your knowledge, without your consent, or even the ability to defend and protect yourself. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because you know there's always a spot where it gets interesting. Kind of like how I like to pick on the fact that, anti-gunners, they'll propose legislation saying, well, we have to address massive crime, or we've got to get our arms around this particular issue. And then look what they propose. They propose 50 caliber bans, like down in, I think that was New Mexico recently, which of course has nothing to do with anything. Here it's a little bit tighter. You gotta follow me on this fact pattern here. We're going back to October 2023, which was unfortunately an awful scenario in Lewiston, Maine, one of the worst mass casualty events in the state's history, where an individual, a sick, evil, twisted individual, killed 18 people. The perpetrator had a documented and known mental health history record. Gun control advocates, of course, never letting a good crisis go to waste to push their agenda, pointed to the yellow flag law and called it a failure. We need something harsher. But here's what a commission that actually investigated the shooting found. The yellow flag law wasn't the problem. Law enforcement had options that it simply did not use, including the option to arrest the perpetrator for battery before the shooting ever took place. The failure was in execution, not in the law. Maine didn't have the wrong law. Maine did not have the right laws applied correctly. And in the 2 years since Lewiston, when awareness of the yellow flag law, as you can imagine, increased dramatically, it indeed has been used more, about 1,100 times, give or take, according to sources that I found. More than 1,100 times in 2 years, compared to the roughly 80 times in the 3 years prior to Lewiston. So the law was working, if this is what you want to call working, just looking at volume. Again, stick with me here. I'm not saying that it's working. Hopefully you get it. My point is the system was being used. And despite the fact that the system now had massive awareness, an insane amount more use, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of percent more use, and despite the fact that if people just applied the old laws, seemingly, per the commission, none of this may have happened, still not good enough. We got to gut the safeguards, rush things through, take the guns first, figure it out later, right? Seize the rights, figure it out later. I want you to think about who's got the power to do this. So in my law firm here in Wisconsin, we have different wings to it, right? We've got the criminal defense wing. I myself am an ex-state criminal prosecutor. We also have a family law wing. We also have an estate planning wing, but I'm going to focus on that family law wing. Family members can do this. A family member going through a contested divorce. Do you realize how crazy that can be oftentimes? What about, as well, an adult child with a financial grievance? Or a roommate in some sort of bitter dispute? The law makes filing a false petition a felony, which is great. But it's also a felony to straw purchase a firearm and to lie in a 4473. Do you realize how low the prosecution rate is for that? It's not borderline non-existent. It's about one click up from borderline non-existent. The deterrent only matters, in theory, if it's practiced in the courtroom. We will see how district attorneys actually prosecute false filers. I'd love to see district attorneys prosecute false filers in sex assault claims and all sorts of other things as well, but that almost never happens. And I want to be very clear about something. This is not a question about who should or should not have access to firearms. That's not fundamentally, if you get right down to the bedrock of this, that's not really the legacy of these sorts of laws. The legacy of these sorts of laws is about whether or not the government can strip people's rights at a moment's notice without them even being aware of it. That's fundamentally what's going on here. And of course, where could these laws wind up migrating to? Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, you keep going on. And moreover, it's about this as well. Time and time and time again, we see an actual tragedy, an actual crisis leveraged for cheap political gain, nominally because it's going to help save something, coming at the cost on the back of our constitutional rights, time and time again. Click, copy, click, paste, over and over and over. And now we are at Maine is the 22nd state with a red flag extreme risk protection order. What do you think about all this? Do you think this is something that can and will eventually go through DC? We're gonna have some sort of nationalized system. Are we all gonna wind up with this in every single state? Do you think this is being properly executed by commissioners and judges? Are they just willy-nilly grabbing guns, figuring we can fix this on the back end? Or do you think they're being extraordinarily cautious, calm, judicious, and conservative in order to protect these individuals' rights who may be getting unfairly targeted by petitioners? Let me know down in the comment field below. Don't forget to hit that like button. We're going to close out with our ever popular quote of the day. This one comes from Justice Joseph Story on his commentaries on the Constitution from 1833. He wrote, quote, "The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic." That's the shield, that's the sword, that's the bulwark against all the things that we don't want to have happen. Thanks for sticking around with me. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for joining us on that video, and if you liked that one, then I think you're gonna like these over here too.